Hey boys and girls, welcome back. We got the next pattern here that I really just haven't had time to put on video for you here the last couple weeks. But this is a swimming October Caddis. So if you've seen these things in the water, you know that they are very orange. And the pattern I've kind of put together here has got some different elements to it. The legs are a soft hackle, and you know, we're utilizing a little bit of a tag here, and it's just, this is more or less just the attractor. We have a copper bead, and I color this this hackle here with just a magic marker, just to give it that little bit of an orange tint and some deer hair type things. This pattern has kind of come about, over the last couple years. I keep catching bugs on the stream and just trying to perfect and find different stages of them that I can tie up and represent. So most of the ones that you see are the ones already flying around. So in those early mornings, cold mornings, things like that, once that sun comes up, it's really when you start to see these things crawling off the rocks and start fluttering around. If you're out in the streams, shake the little trees that are alongside the bank, and you'll start to see some of these things come out. So I always have my eye open. We were down at the Yacht yesterday, and only the second time we've ever been down there, and we ran into an older gentleman that was fishing out there, and he ran across. He just said whatever he had that was green was working. So we kind of came back and tied up some bugs. We're going to show you that one here in a couple weeks too, but a very similar type pattern. It's nice to have these little tags here. You can change the color of them, and kind of just transform this pattern, change the color, and it'll kind of work depending on what year and what color or what time of the year, and what color you're tying it. So let's go through some of the ingredients here. What we have on the front, this is a 3mm copper tungsten. I got folding mill on this hook. This is just their basic caddis hook. Actually, I think this is their heavy, which I'm gonna start using here, 50-67 and size 14 on that. For the body that we have, this is called crochet yarn, and it's super thin, but it is woven or wrapped, and it's round. So that was kind of why I went with this. I got this at Michael's, and you can see the glitter, or it's kind of like a tinsel strip that's wrapped around here. It's a little difficult to work with sometimes, but it just becomes unraveled, but it's going to look just as good, without the tinsel. So for the dubbing that we have up front, this is just rabbit hair, and I'm using this rusty brown. And kind of what I wanted to focus on today is the hackle. This is starling hackle, which you see, all over, at least the, eastern, U.S. And a starling is a very small bird, but they're very invasive. And at my house, I have like a sun porch that's all glass, and constantly having birds flying into that and killing themselves. So I was lucky enough, to come across a starling that I saw it happen, and killed the poor thing innocently. So I harvested the feathers on them. More or less, I just picked all of the feathers off of the neck and the back of the head, just like you would get, when you buy a Brahma hen or a quail, anything along that line. Those are the feathers that we use most for these short hackles, okay? And I'm gonna go through some of the differences on this and why I decided to do that, as we go through the thing here. So let's kind of get started. Put another hook in the vise here. Fishing has been pretty lousy lately. You know, at least in our area here, we just don't have any water. That was why we went down the whole way down to the Yauk, which is almost an hour and a half for us. You know, to try to get some water, and it was, you know, definitely an experience compared to the small creeks that we use here, that we fish here. The other thing I forgot to mention for the tag, Globe Rate number 3. More or less, when you're using this, I pull out a strand probably about a foot long, fold it in half, cut it so you get 2 6-inches, then fold both of those in half and cut it again so that you have, you know, 4, you know, strands of this material, and that's really more than enough. It's such a small tag. I probably got at least a dozen bugs out of that foot-long section. So all we're doing is just stacking these up. I'm gonna wrap this on down to about here, right before the drop. Wet those a little bit, they can get a little squirrely. Just gonna loop over them, a couple loose wraps, and then we're just gonna pull this a little tight, then tack it down, make sure it's on top, and then we're gonna back wrap a little bit. Okay. Now when we cut this, just a millimeter or so, you don't need anything more than that. Like I said, it's just an attractant. All caddis have these little tails. So it's just a matter of representing that. Okay. Now with this crochet thread, just to show you this here, I used this on one bug, okay? And you can kind of see how that little tinsel is starting to come unraveled at the tip. If you cut it off clean, that's usually your best bet. You want to tie that on top of the hook, okay? Because you have to be concerned about the bulk that you're creating with this product. And once I get it on top, then I'll put some really tight wraps in there just to minimize that as best as I can. Because you don't want it bulky. These things are, because that is size 14, so it's a pretty small bug. And I just build up the middle of this hump a little bit to kind of help with the overall look. Then just taper that down into the head. Now we don't have this bead secured, but you can if you want. Okay. Thread I'm using is just 12/0 Nano Silk Black. I didn't show you that one either, sorry. Alright, so we're going to tie that off. And the trick is with this is just to have touching wraps. Kind of have to get the angle started. It's okay if you leave a little bit of gap in there. It looks better when it's tighter. Yeah, and this material, I mean, the fish aren't going to break it, so there's no sense in trying to treat it. Changes the color, and it changes you know, the way that it shines. Okay, we're just going to tie that in up to the head, cover that over. Now this crochet thread, you know, I buy a spool and it's like 100 meters long, okay? I know it's not designed for fly tying, but it's a great product. I got it at Michael's. But I cut off sections of it, you know, probably 10 or 15 foot sections, and I'll dye them. So when I do feathers, or if I do something like that, I get a different color or a different, recipe, color recipe that, I want to try. I'll take some of that white, which is the color that I buy, and just throw it in one of my feathers. So, I end up having, I'll put a picture of the little stands that I made, dozens upon dozens of colors, and I'm never going to use that all because there's just so much material. But if you want to get into that, it's kind of hard to show that kind of thing on video with, the equipment that I have. So that's another subject another time. So we're going to tie that off. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is, get our soft tackle. Now I did a series on soft tackle, maybe a year or so ago, and there's all kinds of different ways that you can use this. And most people aren't going to find dead starlings in their driveway, and we're kind of left with purchasing these things. So the advantage to the starling compared to other bugs is the size. Okay. The size of the fibers. So the smaller the fibers, the smaller you can make your bug. Usually what we have here is a Brahma hen. Okay. Usually when you are picking the length of the fibers that you want, you don't really want it extending past the body here. Okay, so this is a very large feather compared to the others. So most times you go with quail. You can find it, which is a little bit smaller. Here's the Brahma hen. Here's the quail. Okay. Trying to get that to stand out for you. But you can see the quail, the distance, probably about right. Okay. At least this one is. And this was one of the smaller ones that I had on the skin that I bought. So when you're measuring your soft tackle, you don't want it to extend way past the body like this one would. Okay. And you want those feathers to be almost to the end of the body. When we're looking at a starling feather, this was one of the bigger ones, so you can see the difference. Okay, very small. When you put the center of that thread doesn't reach the back, and this was a big one. So even comparing that to a quail, okay, you can see that quail is still going to be longer than this one. Okay, that's the advantage. So if you ever do get a chance to harvest a bird and you just want those neck feathers, I try to go as small as I can, and that's kind of what I'm looking at. If you hunt doves or things along that line, look at those feathers on there and use them. You can really get some. When you're going smaller and smaller and smaller with the bugs, it makes a difference in the way they look. So what you do with that feather, once you pull it off, I left this Brahma hen just to kind of show you. You can see all the marabou stuff that's up top here. We're just going to peel that off. Okay, and that's just going to leave you with the good feather. Now this is a huge. Look at the size of it. When you're peeling those off, you kind of want to peel back as much of the feather that you can so that you're left with this little tag. This is the very tip of the feather, okay? And what you're gonna do with that, take your scissors and cut it off so you just have this very little triangle at the top. And what you're going to do, you're going to use that to tie that onto your bug. Okay, so this is the starling feather, very small, very delicate, and all I did was this. I mean, most of the feathers are grayish black. I just take a little piece of cardboard and a marker, lay it down on there and color it up. So you can see the little tag that I have separated here. what we're gonna do, these feathers have a curve to them. I just dropped it. Okay, I'm gonna tie the back side to the bug, back side of the feather. Okay, I'm just gonna go over that once or twice and just kind of trap it in there so that it's on the side of the hook. And then I'm gonna trim off that excess. Okay. Couple more trapping wraps on there. And I'm gonna give myself a little bit of room here, because when you grab this feather, just try to pull it around. You can see those little fibers start to bounce out of there. You're gonna wrap your string over that once, and this is kind of what you're left with. Okay, go in and try to cut that stem off without cutting any of the fibers. And next thing we're gonna get a tiny amount of dubbing. Okay, that's actually a lot. I'm gonna cut that in half. And all we really want to do with this dubbing is give a little bit of contrast between that gold and the orange, that we have. We want to force those fibers so that they're going to push back towards that. That's probably enough. Yes, that's enough. Peel off that exit. You don't want a bulb or a bump there. They don't show that quite yet at this stage. Okay, and we're gonna tie that off and slip that thread in underneath that dubbing. And sew that off. Okay. Now you can see just the way this is set up here, these fibers barely reach the back of this bug. Okay, and that's just a matter of sizing that feather, before you put it on. You do not want a lot of them. I mean, bugs have 6 legs. These ones do anyway. So to have that little bit of an effect over that bright orange and the red tag, that's that's a good combination. That's about what they look like when they're going through the water. If you see them on the rocks as they're crawling out, yeah, you can distinguish that, oh my gosh, that's a caddis. So give it a shot. Okay, tie some of these up. Oh, the other thing that I would tell you to do, if you have a black marker with a fine tip, put eyeballs on them. At this stage, they're starting to develop eyes that extend away from their head. Okay, kind of like that. When we get to the next bug, we're going to use mono eyes, because their head's bright orange and their eyes are extremely black, so they kind of stand out. All right, guys, there you go. Swimming October caddis. Go tie some up. Hopefully you got water where you're at. I'm thinking I'm staying out of the water here for the next month. We don't have anything on the forecast, so now's a good time to get your box ready and start making things that you want to experiment with. Anything along that line. It's a good time of year to do it. All right. Thanks for stopping by. And we'll see you again in a week or so with an adult pattern.